Through several executive orders, President Biden is set to reverse Trump policy on immigration. He's promised a path to citizenship for at least 11 million illegal aliens, and he's looked to pause deportations. What will the changes mean to national security? Joining us to discuss is former acting secretary for the Department of Homeland Security and now visiting fellow at the Heritage Foundation, Ken Cuccinelli. Ken, thanks for being here. As I mentioned in the intro, President Biden is preparing to send an immigration bill to Congress. It promises a path to citizenship for illegal immigrants already in the country. What message does that policy send to the people already in line for citizenship with their green cards and who've played by the rules? And what does it say to the people looking to cross into the country or overstay their visas?
Well, of course, it tells the people who've been playing by the rules that it belittles their respect for the law and for our standards. And it's a very sad approach for a country that is founded on the rule of law, not the rule of men, that this is a serious undercutting of that basic principle. And there are real world consequences, and we're already seeing them, Raymond, at the border. We are seeing numbers attempting to cross into this country illegally every day now that we never reached since the crisis, the humanitarian crisis of the summer of 2019. And they're all coming because of, taken together, what President Biden is doing. It sounds like an invitation for people to come here illegally and be welcome doing it. And this has very serious consequences. Our system is not built to handle this, and it's going to have humanitarian downsides in addition to national security.
On his first day in office, President Biden suspended construction of the border wall. Now, not everyone is on board with this ending of the construction, including Democrats. Representative Henry Cuellar was asked about Biden scrapping the wall, and he said, just yesterday, I got a video of about 150 people walking on the Mexican side, all in a row, going to the Rio Grande so they can cross. I was talking to Border Patrol, and they got about 100+ unaccompanied kids. They're starting to come up. And this is why I've cautioned the Biden administration. I'm waiting for the new secretary to come in and to say, hey, guys, let's be very cautious. I mean, the wall, take it down or don't do it. But we have to have technology, personnel, and certain policies in place, because otherwise the bad guys are staging to get people across. What bad guys is he referring to here? Should there be a broader debate about the necessity of that wall on the southern border, Ken?
Yeah, Raymond, who are those bad guys? An excellent question. And Congressman Cuellar knows very well because his district sits on that border. And those bad guys are literally the most evil, vicious organizations in the Western Hemisphere. They're the Mexican drug cartels that run this human smuggling operation. They control, make no mistake about it, they control large swaths of the border, including across the Rio Grande from Congressman Cuellar's district. And Mexico does not control all of its territory. They don't control about 1/6 of their own country. These evil, vicious, uncaring people who see trafficking in human beings as just as good as trafficking in drugs. They just want to make money off it, and they don't care what happens to these people or to our country. Let's be very clear. And they are the same folks who do both. They smuggle people in the same pipelines they smuggle drugs into this country that kills 70,000 Americans a year.
Ken, I just saw a story earlier today where 11 Iranians were arrested in Arizona after jumping the U.S.-Mexico border. How frequent is that, where you have, foreign nationals from across the ocean, not people contiguously attached to the U.S., trying to breach the borders?
Well, Raymond, it happens all the time. It's just not in the same numbers as Mexican nationals crossing or Guatemalans, Hondurans, El Salvadorans. They make up the largest proportion, but we get them from all over the world trying to sneak in, whether it's Syria, Iran, and the list goes on. We get Chinese citizens, communist Chinese citizens trying to sneak in as well. I mean, literally over 100 nations are caught down there every year. And of course, for those folks, it isn't the raw numbers like we worry about from our own hemisphere. It's the
Right.
special security concerns that are heightened. And those folks, unfortunately, have gotten the same message that President Biden has sent to everyone else is we're not going to stop you. And of course, that's not absolutely true, but that's the message that's gotten out. And that's what's created an already existing rush on our southern border with without even 2 weeks going by of the Biden presidency.
In the last several weeks, we've seen Guatemalan security forces attempting to block thousands of Honduran migrants from heading north towards Mexico and the U.S. border. Now, the Department of Homeland Security suspended the Migration Protection Protocols, also known as the Stay in Mexico policy. Now, that required asylum seekers trying to enter the U.S. from the southern border to wait in Mexico for their court hearings. What do you make of that suspension, suspending that policy? And how could this impact border security and the immigration system in a larger sense?
So, first of all, the Remain in Mexico program was one of the most spectacularly successful cooperative arrangements we've ever had with Mexico on any program for anything, period. And to just throw it out tells you this administration is not interested in national security, the law, or even success. They just want to be behaving consistent with a particular political narrative, regardless of the harm to this country and to Mexico. And you pointed out the invasion of Guatemala that we all saw video footage of, that caravan shoving through and forcing their way violently through Guatemalan security forces, invading their country. The reason that's happening is because of the Biden effect. If President Biden isn't inviting mass numbers of folks up, they are not breaching Guatemala's security, as you saw in that video footage. That is something that hasn't happened for almost 2 years because of the cooperation established between the United States, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and Mexico. We had a very good regional arrangement working, and it worked for all 5 countries. It wasn't just for our benefit. It was for theirs as well. And all you need to do is look at that violent video to see how Guatemala is struggling in this new environment.
This Tuesday, Biden signed 3 executive orders on immigration. Prior to signing them, he had this to say about the number of executive orders he signed and why. Listen closely.
I'm not making new law. I'm eliminating bad policy. The last president of the United States issued executive orders I thought were very counterproductive to our security, counterproductive to who we are as a country.
Ken Cuccinelli, how was cooperation with Mexico or deportations, for example, counterproductive to our security?
Well, it wasn't counterproductive. It's part of our security. And our law, voted for by Joe Biden when he was in the Senate, repeatedly calls for exactly the kinds of things we were doing in the administration. Joe Biden voted. He voted to put up fences and walls. He voted for that. He voted for the kind of legal standards that we actually implemented through regulation. The change for Joe Biden is one of appeasing a political base that has no interest in the well-being or security of the United States of America as a country. We cannot survive and thrive if we erase our own borders. And he signed 19 executive orders in his first week. Both Presidents Obama and Trump signed 5. So he has, he clearly intends to use executive authority, even when it's dramatically and obviously illegal to do so. He still feels like clearly that he scores political points by doing so. And so I don't see it letting up.
Well, one of Biden's new executive orders will create a task force led by the Secretary of Homeland Security, which will work to reunite immigrant families that were separated at the border under the Trump administration. Now, in a press briefing, when asked if the administration's changes were a signal to people to come into the country, Press Secretary Jen Psaki had this to say.
We want to put in place an immigration process here that is humane, that is moral, that considers applications for refugees, applications for people to come into this country at the border in a way that treats people as human beings. I don't think any parent can look at what's happened to those kids over the last couple of years and not feel that we should do everything in our power to get those kids back with their parents. So we are trying to repair the damage and the horrific actions of the prior administration.
Ken Cuccinelli, you were in charge of what Psaki calls horrific actions. Wasn't it always the policy of the Trump administration to reunite families with the parents when possible? And didn't the Obama administration separate kids from family units as well?
Yes, that's where that traces back to. And now the Biden administration gets to use the cages bought by the Obama administration that they like to attack when it was the Trump administration. You know, until you got to that sentence by Jen Psaki, Raymond, you could have been quoting me. You know, the vague language, of course, we want to treat people with dignity and humanity, and particularly in the age of COVID, encouraging smugglers who don't care about these people, for whom the best data we have suggests 30% of the women and children are abused in the transit, to make that trip is not humane. It doesn't respect their dignity. And it's amazing to hear such a pro-abortion administration use these words, but not use them everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Why did the Trump administration and every administration separate the children from the so-called parental units or family units that they entered the country with? Why is that necessary? I've spent time down on the border, as you have, Ken. People don't understand what's happening here. They just think it's some cruel, tyrant separating kids from family. There's a good and humane reason for that separation.
Yeah, so there's a few actually, but the most important thing to understand is the analogy is virtually a direct analogy to when police officers go in and arrest a criminal. If they show up in your neighborhood and arrest the father of a family, they remove him and put him in jail. Well, guess what? You just separated him from his family. It is an exact analogy. That's what's going on. These are people who are being prosecuted for committing crimes against the United States. When we prosecute adults for committing crimes, we put them in a jail and they're separated from their family. It's really no more complicated than that. To stop doing that required stopping prosecuting adults from violating criminal offenses. It was, so the language used there is wildly inaccurate.
Well, I was also told by ICE agents that they're often not sure when these family units come into the country because they're given preference. They're not sure if this child is actually a biological family member of the people they're traveling with. So you have to ensure that by separating them first, and then they're held in very nice facilities until they determine whether they're actually a family.
Raymond, you're absolutely right. And what ICE discovered in some pilot studies they did was they had large percentages, a sixth, a fifth of children coming over the border who had nothing to do with the alleged families that they were traveling with. And many of them had been recycled by these human traffickers I described earlier to be used over and over to pose as part of a family, not at their choice. They weren't, given an option here. This was using the children to get other people into the country.
Yeah, they're being trafficked. Judge Drew Tipton of the Southern District of Texas, a Trump appointee, blocked Biden's 100-day pause on deportations. Yeah. However, he ruled that the government had not proven why a pause was necessary. In the meantime, ICE has gone forward and deported hundreds of people to 3 countries, Jamaica, Guatemala, and Honduras. Scheduling deportations falls under the U.S. Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. What do you make of the ruling, first of all, and the ICE actions to proceed with these deportations?
Sure. A declaration by the government, headed by the president, who has to swear to an oath to uphold the laws and enforce them, to say we will not enforce the law, has real constitutional problems. So I appreciate the judge requiring a reason to say we won't enforce the law, because that's what they're doing. So that was an appropriate outcome. ICE's mission one of their missions is the repatriation of people who are here illegally. If you don't have an actual process to return people here illegally back to their home country, you don't have a complete immigration system.
Prior to leaving your position at Homeland Security, Mr. Cuccinelli, you signed a labor agreement with the ICE agents union. According to the New York Times report, the agreement you signed effectively ties the Biden administration's hands by giving the union unprecedented veto authority over Biden's immigration policies. Does it? And why did you agree to that policy with the union?
So that's called pre-implementation bargaining. It is not a veto. It is a consultative right on the part of the union that represents law enforcement officers who we've already seen how this administration feels about those individuals and their safety. They're willing to sacrifice them, certainly, to those who are breaking our laws. That union had outstanding issues that literally lingered for years. I want to say more than a decade. So this wasn't something that just came up in the Trump administration. They could have resolved all of these issues in the Obama administration, and they chose not to do so. We resolved some, but not all of the issues, and we did what we could to close that work out. And it does put the union in a position of having pre-consultation participation in policy changes that affect their officers and affect the safety of American communities.
Before I let you go, Ken, you were at Homeland Security. As you know, since the riot at the Capitol, Homeland Security has designated white supremacists and even those unhappy with the government as domestic extremists. Now, President Biden, speaking at the prayer breakfast, said this earlier today.
We know now we must confront and defeat political extremism, white supremacy, and domestic terrorism. For so many in our nation, this is a dark, dark time. So where do we turn? Faith.
Ken, when you hear that call to, seek out extremism and get it out of the country and the military as well, this sounds like conservatives or pro-lifers or any political opponent can now be labeled an extremist. The Defense Department's issued a stand-down order for the military to conduct an inquiry into extremism and right-wing extremism within its ranks. Your thoughts on these actions?
So this is, first of all, the Department of Homeland Security is always and has always been concerned with extremism of every kind. The president and the Democrats in general are attempting to politicize it. Look at what Nancy Pelosi is doing in the House. Magnetometers off the floor of the House. Why? The implication is Republicans are a danger to everyone around them. That's why she asked for 5,000 more National Guard members for the inauguration, even though there was no threat to anything at the inauguration, that it was well in hand. This is stagecraft intended to paint a picture that if you voted for Trump, if you're a conservative, if you're a Christian or pro-life, you are evil and you are a threat to this country. And it is truly one of those sort of lines of propaganda we've seen in other countries, none of which we've held in high regard. And it's a very dangerous path that they're going down.
Ken Cuccinelli, thank you for your insights, and we will check in with you in the days ahead.
Good to be with you.